Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, broadcasting to you in the Pineless Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Xtreme Studios. I'm looking in front of a whole bunch of buttons that are flashing, whirring, beeping, and buzzing because I've got the young 20-something Professor Pixel here with me, also from Central Florida. I'm trying to dial in how I feel about tonight's episode, which is Columbo Season 2, Episode 5, Requiem for a Falling Star, because as you know, Pixel is a young man like yourself. Everybody cares about everybody's needs and how they feel and all these touchy-feely things that back in the 80s we would laugh at you about, and that's how you learn to get a thick skin. Nothing beats a thin-skinned actor or actress or whatever you want to identify as, because we have to be sensitive to that in today's climate, allegedly. But that's the topic of tonight's episode here in Columbo, Requiem for a Falling Star. What does a lady that happens to have a certain sort of financial instrument that nobody has used before or probably since in an episode of Columbo, how would this play out? I'm kind of in the middle on this episode, especially after talking pretty positively about the last one. So it's going to be a kind of a tough walk for me. I'm wondering if this is suffering from what I call the contact lens issue, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. What's your initial take?
I have to admit that I did fall asleep during this episode last night. I finished it. I woke up. I finished it. I did fall asleep during the episode, but it has to do with the episode. I really like this episode. It has a lot of charm to it. It's Columbo in Hollywood. He's on a movie lot. You have an not an old world star, but
for that time, yes, you could say, classic studio actress, especially since this show was what, 72, this episode?
73. I guess it was recorded in 72, but it came out in 73.
Yeah, it's Ann Baxter. She's been in stuff. She's not unattractive. She's middle age. I do appreciate her role in it. But again, some of the Columboisms we've talked about, I don't know that we get all of them here, particularly with the setup of the death, which is kind of funny, but kind of lazy. And so get us going into it. Let's get this thing
rocking. After a quick fake out, going ahead and just showing that, hey, this is an actress. She goes home. There is a certain gentleman that's back, a writer named Jerry Parks. He's back in town, and he wanted to write a biography for Miss Nora Chandler. However, she declined. She didn't feel like that. However, Jerry reveals after sending Nora's assistant Jean away that he has some information. He has some information that he doesn't want to share. No, he'll sit on it, but he needs help financing his next project. So Nora's going to be doing that. But the kicker is that Jean, Nora's assistant, has been writing to Jerry, and it seems they're in love and going to marry.
She thinks so.
She thinks so. Yes,
this is insulting to me, though, because even though she's young and naive and they're boning, it's worked against the pattern of strong women that we've seen for the most part on Columbo episodes that seem very independent and all that too. So I just thought, really? Because the thing with Jerry, he's basically TMZ, right? He's got the goods on her. He wants to blackmail her. He's going to, turn a dime on her. And they throw the line in there rather obviously about, well, I know what happened when you're over in Italy or making that film and that didn't make any money. Well, yeah, it's called accounting. Go talk to my lawyers for that, So I just thought that stood out pretty obvious early on.
I didn't think much on it. I'm not gonna lie. It was just information given, and I was like, okay, received. But no, they've been writing. It seems that they're going to be getting married. It's very serious for Jean. And Nora seems very, very distraught, but goes ahead and says, okay, I understand. I'm sorry, Jean. Here, I have a list of things that I need you to do today. Here's a list. So I don't know what I must have missed it, but we'll talk about that at the end. She goes ahead, gives Nora the list, and then she goes out. She wears this big coat and a hat. She goes, she gets gasoline, and goes to Jerry's condo, his house, whatever you want to call it. He goes ahead. She goes
His
ahead
man
there.
cave, his mansion,
His
his
mansion.
castle.
The mansion. Is it a mansion?
No, but it is a house in the Hollywood Hills, so it's very expensive and has an obscenely good view of all the smog back in the 70s.
She goes ahead and just douses gasoline all over the driveway. And the car pulls up. She lights a match and she runs away into the to her car. She goes out later that same day. She's out at dinner with some friends and her new flame, which is the owner of their studio. And the policeman comes around. We have terrible news. It involves Jerry Parks. His car blew up earlier today. Oh no, that's horrible. But why are you telling me? Oh, because and then Jerry Parks walks in because he wasn't driving. It was your assistant, Jean, and she passes out right then and there. Just faints. Columbo he's on the case now. He takes a look at the scene, and then he gets to meet Nora Chandler, who he says he knows. Oh, I've loved you all my life. My wife has loved you. She'll get a big kick out of it. Let me give her a call. What do you mean she's shopping? And I'll go ahead. I'll pause there. Okay.
Yeah, one thing I want to comment about Nora's character, played by Ann Baxter, is there's a lot of, I mentioned she's an old world studio person, and so, for example, a lot of people that were old school, if they didn't come directly from silent films, transitioning over, which is those 30s, 40s actors, a lot of them were played in vaudeville, which is kind of like a combination off Broadway. They were what we'd call like theatrical, right? And so the medium of film at this time in television had been around for a bit, but you still had some older people like a Charlton Heston. So a lot of people consider Charlton Heston a very hammy actor, a very bad actor, the best of the bad actors. William Shatner falls in that. Both those guys are Shakespearean trained, which means they trained in certain areas to perform on a stage, and those dramatic gestures, so you can be physically seen on stage and heard in the way you talk, doesn't translate well to TV, where you can be more nuanced with your movement and speaking. So there was a lot of talk about how in the last episode that we reviewed with Columbo in London, about how there was a campy episode, and the in joke was that they're so stupid and really not that good at actors that it's hard to act like you're stupid and be convincing doing that. And they did a good job in it. And in this episode, for her, Nora, as an old school actress, she's just about 25%, 50% more over the top than she needs to be almost every single interaction. It's not bad acting, it's overacting because it's not believable, but you believe that you're watching an actress who commits murder and is involved in this week's episode as somebody that's trying to put on an air in front of everybody that they expect to see out of her. Because to your point, when Columbo comes up and says, oh, I really, really like her, this is supposed to be the cutesy way he gets into her, has her, talk to her wife, and she's not there, she's shopping or whatever. And he's like, just fan worship, right? And she like, sister, just the way she holds her arms out, like almost like give me a hug, but like, ta-da, it's me. And I thought this whole episode, that was the whole point in what she was supposed to be doing. So I have no problem with it, but any of the reviews I read online, a lot of people were kind of like, no, this is, kind of stupid. It's really bad acting. I'm like, no, I just don't think it is. I think she just did a great job with that. I really did.
I didn't get that at all. I enjoyed her performance. The fainting was like, oh wow, she's really shocked. She's really surprised. She's really jarred by this revelation. But from then on, I think her performance is fine.
I'll say this: the of course, when they meet, there's always some observations he's making and cataloging in his head, whether it's pictures, whether it's flowers, that sort of thing. And, we saw that in one of the earlier episodes of Pink Carnation, I think it was, is what I like to think of it because of, the music song there by one of the greatest country western singers of all time. And of course, that's Marty Robbins. But in this one, he's just looking at some of the pictures that she has because she's a studio product. She's been around for a long time, so much so that she has this special little cottage, area. It's like her trailer, if you will, that's on like a nice piece of grassy land. So she means a lot to the studio, and she's boning, I guess, the guy that now owns it or whatever. It's just. This episode moves very fast. It's very brisk in that sense. It's not a long episode, which I appreciate because I think the middle part's kind of filler for me. I think that her setting up the death scene with the gasoline in the car, it just looked weak to me. It wasn't creative. It wasn't really interesting. It was just, okay, let's get this kill over with so we can get into the story, which I didn't like. And even though they did have a bit more of the Columboisms where he's talking to her a lot and charming her, which I do appreciate, a lot of this was him being fanboy kind of stuff and not necessarily bringing a bunch of stuff up. I thought originally it was kind of cool because the person she planned to kill, I mean, you could argue that it was a mistake or not. Doesn't seem to be. Whatever. She got rid of this one young woman. She's an evil bitch. I mean, she really is, but she's not yelling. She's screaming. She's very calm and composed. I actually liked her performance as a character. I just didn't find her very interesting or deliciously entranced in this big fight with Columbo and all that too. She did everything she can to just kind of like overact her way out of each situation, which at some point I got what she was trying to do, how they wrote it, but it got a little bit tiring because honestly, when we talk a little bit about the ending, which we'll get to here shortly, I feel it kind of falls apart, all of it, with the way they do it. But I mean, there's some scenes of like Columbo following her and the guy that's trying to blackmail her, and they have a meeting, and it's obviously somewhere probably of significance in LA. I just don't know what the place is. They don't really put a sign up there, and he kind of like accidentally walks up to them, and there's the scene and two here where she goes to intimidate or really try to kill him actually by trying to drive him, and it's horrible. It's awful. And part of me goes, hey, Universal, I think it was. I think they filmed it on their studios. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure the Columbo files will correct me. It just seemed like they wanted to put in a lot of stock footage of people walking around and everything too. And the one reason why that I don't think that's arguable is the fact that while you get a lot of stuff of what's going on in the studio, you get apparently a very famous person here towards the end that's got glasses on. I guess she was a wardrobe designer, whatever the title is, the lady with glasses that goes to get Columbo a new tie. And all those Academy Awards or whatever, those are actually hers. I thought that was kind of cool. I wouldn't have known that at the time, but that was like a big deal. That was like an inside joke, but it was introduced into the episode, and I thought done well.
No, I think that was handled well as well. Yeah, the middle part here is simply just back and forth. Like, Jerry knows that it was Nora that tried to kill him. I didn't think you'd actually try me. And then he has more, but Nora wants to get ahead of it, so she reveals to Columbo in that scene with the tie, oh, well, actually committed a little bit of fraud. Just a little bit. It's fine. It's fine. The studio forgives me. Government might not, but whatever. It's fine. But that's not Columbo's.
Let me ask you this, and I'm being very serious when I ask you this. And again, we just talk about what we like, don't like, what we think works, don't work. So we try not to inject politics or anything unless it's pertinent to the episode. One thing that is pertinent to this episode, and you being the young 20-something here on the Xtreme Movie Show, I wanted to ask you, what, if anything, do you know about like the Illuminati, the Shriners, all these kinds of secret societies, that sort of stuff?
Not a lot. I don't really care, so I don't look too much into them. So the Shriners thing was
Freemasons, that kind of stuff.
When I hear Shriner, I think like Shiner, like a trunk. I was like, was he looking for an alcoholic for a second? And then I realized, no. My bad.
So the whole thing is that, there are groups of societies over the years that have taken on names and done stuff. Some, of course, might be considered religious. Some might be secular or whatever like that. Some are like, stuff like that. But there's an American history, and I think they only touched on it half jokingly and say Nicolas Cage movies, The National Treasures and all that, where they talk about like Freemasons designing this and designing that, and it's part of the Constitution, it's on our dollar bills, it's on our monetary system and all that. That stuff is real. It does exist. It's not a lie to sit there and say a lot of Jewish people run Hollywood. They would only allow certain things in their movies, and you could argue whether or not you belong to a particular political affiliation. But back then they did have an anti-communist group try to get into Hollywood, identify communists, which people didn't like, and they thought it was a bad thing. But the point is Columbo notices somebody's got a Shriner's ring, and it's a big deal because there's only like so many levels of it. And so this one was not just some jabroni. This is like a real big deal. Why they put that in here as something in the episode, I'm not 100% sure, but it goes back a really long ways. And so these things sometimes pop up, I've noticed, on older television where the references are kind of like lost on people. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing or whatever, but much like Tom Cruise's affiliation, the Shriners, I think, got a really big presence here in Central Florida as well, too. But they've been around a long time. So I kind of, when this came up, I was like, are they really talking about this? Why is that pertinent to the show? But it's the fact that most guys way back when, to show affiliations, they would wear, say, a signet ring or a ring, like a pinky ring is what we used to call it. Mafia members would wear that. Some people would have their initials in it. Some would have, that's the ring that you would carry. So you'd have your wedding ring on your left hand, and you'd have your affiliated ring on your other hand. So you would have two rings as a guy. A lot of jewelry's not really worn in terms of functionality, in terms of social status, the way it used to be. And obviously, you know, one good example is that most people don't wear suits anymore or dress up or know how to dress for their complexion or style and everything else for it. So the emphasis is degraded over the years. That's one of the comments we made on stuff we reviewed from the 60s, 70s. Generally, people dressed a lot better and cared more about their appearance because it was very vital to send a signal of where you're at. And that's kind of one of the in-jokes about Columbo, right? It's his raincoat. He looks kind of rumpled. He looks like he's somebody who shouldn't know how to solve things. He's got a false eye. You know, it's, except for the TV movies we reviewed, that's kind of the gotcha part to it, is that, gosh dang it, he's just so kind of okay and all that, and he'll just work his way into you, and you'll slip up and say something that you shouldn't. And that's where this is turning. But the whole Shriners thing was like a key element. I just was like, I felt like that was like a writer's decision. Hey, let's put this in here. So I'm making a lot too much ado about nothing.
You know, it's the same duo.
It's there.
It's the same duo as the last episode. The same director, same writer.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead and you already mentioned that she gets to a point where she tries to run him down.
It's so bad.
Because it's revealed by Columbo to her that the death of her assistant was on purpose. The tire had the air let out of it, and it was tightened up. And so it almost feels like an emotional moment of trying to run him down because of that. However, then Columbo comes around. What does he say exactly? Which gets her rushing back to her condo. Do you remember?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
Do you remember exactly what it is that he says that gets her rushing back to the condo?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay, well, it has something to do with the fountain. That's pretty much what it is. And
well, there's a fountain in the back for those who haven't seen the episode. And again, this is part of a set piece. So on the studio lots where most things are filmed, or were back in the day, the way this was set up, there is this like spread. It's got like a college. It's got like, it looks like Leave It to Beaver. You got a house kind of in the center. You got the white picket fence. It's private property. She owns that. That's an asset for her. You know, that's what we find out here, is that her husband or whoever ran the studio before died under mysterious circumstances, right? And so, you know, everything's changed, but she still has this little thing. And so it gets a little convoluted because as somebody viewing this episode, unless you know Columbo really well or know about this episode, you might go, are they trying to make this a key point? Because ultimately it ends up being pretty much kind of the crux of the matter, why she's in financial straits a little bit here too. But it's something that when Columbo's on there and they talk about, yeah, I was here, I my first movie as a kid was here, and he actually even sits down in a chair and notices, an old movie of hers where she's dressed up as a guy, and that's probably like one of those last flash of insight moments that we get from him. But he's also noticed, which unless you're paying attention, you missed this whole episode. It's missing what will tie everything together. It's the fact that the water fountain in the back of her yard, in the courtyard, doesn't work.
Yeah.
And why is that, sir?
Because there's a body. So it turns
a body?
out
What body?
her husband. She was
Which husband? Which one?
Is there a number? Is it her second? Is it? I don't remember that. I just remember that her husband was under there. So she faked her husband running away all the years ago now. Last seen on a boat. Turns out it was her dressed in a coat, dressed as him. And the pictures were just set up by her. So that way she could have a story. He's gone. Goodbye. And it turns out that they got in a fight and she hit his head with a bottle because he was fooling around and he brought his mistress into their house, and it's like one step too far. But the thing is that Jean knew it. I didn't realize this entire episode that Jean's death was on purpose.
Right.
I thought it was a legitimate mistake. So when she faints, I thought it was real. When she tries to run him down, I think that's because she's finding out that he set her up. But no, Columbo reveals at the end, you killed her. She had a secret that you were worried that she would tell Jerry, the man she loved. And so she went ahead and killed the assistant that was with her for 18 years. I do love at the end him reading his notes, because he doesn't usually do that. Like he takes his notes, his mental notes, and he uses them to come to his conclusion, but he's reading them out to her because he wants her to understand how he did it, how he found it, the things that tied it together for him. And he reveals at the end, like, the last bit that brushed you here, I just wanted to see how you react. I didn't have it until you came here. And it doesn't feel like a contact lens situation to me. The contact lens situation feels very, very like thrown together. But somehow him knowing this information and using that to rush it into the end. He doesn't plant evidence. He doesn't go ahead and like press her for information. He just knows by the end. And he hates that he knows because he loves this woman so much. She's a great actress. Seen her all her life. Starstruck Columbo, but he has to do the right thing. So she grabs her coat and they leave. I think it's a solid end. I do. I was legitimately surprised, which doesn't happen with Columbo because you see the ending. Like you see how the murder's done. But here, I didn't realize it. And I don't know if I went back and watched it from the start again, if I go to that beginning, that I can notice that that's what she's doing. But she fooled me.
Well, it feels weak to me. So here's the thing. It's understandable that the assistant she set up to, get killed was intentional, that maybe you didn't know it and was an accident. I thought, man, that would have been fantastic if they would have had an episode where she accidentally killed the wrong person and has to cover it up. I thought that's a tremendous angle to have, right?
Yeah,
but then you're like, no, wait a minute. And then you have to understand what her motivations are, which you don't necessarily know immediately early on. But the whole thing that comes back at the 11th hour, which is why I think is a contact lens kind of thing, is the whole, oh yeah, the body's buried here, that's why the fountain doesn't work. Because other than the verbal thing about the fountain not working and it being an old set or whatever, like that, a throwaway comment, it's not that obvious that it's...
That's not what they're looking for.
I understand that. And
He
as a
had to find
viewer,
the
the point
motive.
is I think we take the joy out of going, how does Columbo unravel it? And we know everything that's pertinent to it, whether it's 2 gas cans or whether it's this or that, or a pair of glasses or something, or the pearls. And the episode with Honor Blackman in it, right, where the pearls were in there. I didn't like him flicking in at the end and basically bluffing. I think that's bullshit, but it makes sense because we saw them early on here. Here we see Columbo go out the fountain. We might have seen a quick glance of no water in it, but I'm going, it's a fucking TV studio set. I don't expect everything 100%. It's not like it was a house and everything's rich and they have a quick comment about, you got such a wonderful fountain here. It's a shame it's not working. Oh, it's not, or oh, it hasn't worked for years, or whatever like that. That would stick in the back of our head as a viewer to go, oh, that might be significant, because we don't relate to a body being buried until late in the third act when we find out her old husband that died under mysterious circumstances. She confesses that's where the body's buried. That I don't like that at all. I do like the fact that she was able to kind of hold out that she was supposed to be the victim rather than a dude who was kind of slimy. But I just, it's an episode to me. I really do think that, like, this is a forgettable episode. It's not bad. It's not good. I don't feel anything's redeeming about it. Like, oh, this one episode is a great scene, specifically this or that. I think she acted in it fine. I was disappointed, I guess, a little bit. This just seemed kind of like, Columbo paint by numbers kind of thing. There wasn't anything unique about it that maybe in the first season, almost every episode seemed somewhat unique. And so my disappointment really kind of stems from that and how quick they put the ending together. I don't have a problem with him being starstruck. I liked how he went to arrest her. No, I'm here to arrest you for the murder of blah, blah, blah. That's great and all. The other dude's a slime ball. But Columbo, for me, has been the best when he's almost where he almost takes it personal and they're like almost arguing with each other and the person's escalating, getting more and more irritated. She wasn't really like that, which I do appreciate. I like that. It wasn't enough for me. I mean, it was a great length, great time. It feels like the Columbo episode and the last one before, which was Camp. Again, season 2 has been a little bit different for me. I'm not liking it as much as season 1 because of the introduction of a dog that you haven't even seen censor referenced, and other things too, where they make him a little bit more goofy. And so I appreciate this episode feeling like it's a more traditional Columbo episode, but it's just it's missing the couple things that when you mix them all together have this great punch to it. So I'm still waiting for that. Maybe again I've been spoiled and I have to lower my expectations, but not a bad episode. Not bad.
I think it's a good episode. I really do. It's just that
The murder's the weakest one. Come on, it's really bad.
What?
Come on, the murder.
Well, what was the episode a few days ago? Not a few days ago. A few episodes ago that ended with information that was impossible for us to receive.
I'm not sure which one you're referencing.
There was an episode that I got really upset at. Like at the end, by the end of the review, I was pissed at it. I was mad at the episode because it strings us along all throughout it, and there's no way that we can go ahead and get how Columbo could fix it.
Well, I will say that without knowing off the top of my head which episode specifically you're mentioning, that is a theme. We want, however that's going to happen, to be available to us. That's what I'm saying. So I do agree with you. I feel there's a little bit of that in here. It's not as blatant as some other ones there too. I think we're just going to have to assume, based off prior performance, that the future performance is going to be somewhat similar, where we want a little bit more cut and dry. I'm simply saying I think the better episodes tend to be more of ones where you have an over-the-top bad person that's really thinks they're smart, and they generally are smart. I'm not saying the actress here, Nora, was stupid, but this is just more of I'm just getting by and getting away with it to me, rather than I'm going to go ahead and do something really cool and really slick. I'm going to try to outwit myself and outthink it and be in the mind of a killer. She doesn't feel threatening at all. She just feels like somebody that did a bad thing, and that's it. And it's not, there's no intensity to it. So here they need to like put it back in the oven with a bit more spices and let it simmer for a bit longer to get a tastier Columbo episode out of it, in my opinion.
I really just, for me, it worked. I think being surprised was legitimately nice. I don't know what part of the episode, like hearing dead husband, that I thought, oh, did she kill him? And it was a joke that I was thinking of, but I forgot about it, like, because I was focused on the rest of the story. Because
Right.
I legitimately didn't know that she was trying to kill her assistant.
And that's bad.
That in.
But I like that, though. That
Oh
was
my
the
god.
misdirection.
Huh?
The misdirection was good.
The misdirection was very good. That's the thing that wins me over for this episode. So yeah, I just legitimately I was entertained. Are you entertained? Yes, I am.
Bring on the next episode. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 2, Episode 5, Requiem for a Falling Star, Columbo, here on the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, saying thanks for watching, listening, for Professor Pix and everybody else here involved. Good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.